All right, y'all, welcome to the Scott Horton Show. I'm the director of the Libertarian Institute, editorial director of antiwar.com, author of the book Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, and the brand new Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. And I've recorded more than 5,500 interviews since 2003, almost all on foreign policy, and all available for you at scotthorton.org. You can sign up for the podcast feed there, and the full interview archive is also available at youtube.com/Scott Horton Show. Hey guys, on the line, I've got Phil Weiss, and he runs mondoweiss.net, which is just a really great site covering everything Israel-Palestine, including American politics, Israeli politics, and of course the occupation and persecution of the poor Palestinians and all of this stuff. And it's just great, and you should read it every day. Welcome back to the show, Phil. How you doing?
Great. How you doing, Scott?
Man, I'm great, and I really appreciate you joining me on the show here. And
no problem.
There's so much doings and crazy things going on in Israel-Palestine right now, and there's a lot going on in the world all over the place. It's hard for everybody to keep track, so I'm very happy to have your support here, really, in helping fill us in what the hell is going on. So I want to start with Thomas Friedman in the New York Times. Bill Clinton says he's the most important public intellectual in America, which is somehow meaningful. He wrote this piece, Netanyahu is shattering Israeli society. So first of all, I was wondering if you could please help us understand, for those who don't know, who is Thomas Friedman? Why does it matter that he has this opinion? What lens is he looking through? And what's the meaning of this, please, sir?
Well, I think Friedman is very important because, of course, he works for the New York Times, but and he's a very good writer in a kind of a mass audience kind of way. Makes things really simple and doesn't make people feel stupid. And he has supported the neoconservative right-wing agenda pretty much for the last 30 years in one form or another, with a liberal gloss on it. And he's a leading Zionist. He was, as he said, Israel had me at hello when he was a boy. And so he has promoted Israel for liberals and conservatives and for the Jewish community in the pages of the New York Times reliably for 30 years, for 40 years. And
he has such reputation, I guess, because I think this is right, that he was an actual journalist for a while there. I've read articles by him, like reporting from Lebanon in 1985 or whatever, something, right?
Yeah, he made a name for himself as a reporter for the New York Times, as a Mideast correspondent. And I guess to his credit, I haven't read that stuff in a while, but he was somewhat honest about some of Israel's war crimes at one point, which was refreshing for the New York Times.
Mm-hmm. It's important, I think, the way you say that, he's not just a liberal Zionist, but he really has been kind of a handmaiden for the neocons this whole time, where he'll say, like, oh, those neocons over there, yeah, those guys are some neocons and stuff, but he's with them 100% of the time. Yeah. Sort of like Henry Kissinger.
Crucially, as you pointed out in your book, Fool's Errand, I think, or one of an earlier book, that this is a guy who, when Palestinians were doing terror attacks in Tel Aviv back in 2000, he said that was an American issue and that we had to go smash something in the Arab world. And he supported the Iraq War on that basis. So there you have it. He took an Israeli cause and said this was an American concern and we should go to war over it in Baghdad.
Yep. And then I like it too because he will implicate himself and his buddies too, because as he told Haaretz, I have the block quote in Enough Already where they're paraphrasing him. So it's like you can tell some of it is direct quotes out of his mouth, but some of it is sort of the way that they phrase it. But it's him saying, it's just one simple paragraph. And it's him saying, all the guys who got us into the Iraq War are within 9 miles from here right now. I think that was a quote, 9 miles. And he's talking about the neocons. And he's saying, this group of 25 guys did this. And it's like,
if you put those 25 guys on a desert island at the start of this, there would not have been a war.
Right. That's
great
the
point.
Quote.
Absolutely true.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally
and
right.
he said, and Tom Friedman said that George W. Bush learned why his father was a one-termer was because he challenged Israel over settlements, and he wasn't going to make that mistake. He had to out-Israel the Democratic Party. Great point.
Yes, sir.
You're asking
So,
about what he's doing now, though, right?
yeah, well, look, I mean, I think that's an important background. So
Absolutely.
people understand if they don't already understand
Absolutely.
who this guy is. It's really important when he writes stuff a lot of the
Very
times. This
important.
is the centrist, center left liberal consensus, what we think
Yes.
about things. The world is flat and all of this stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do
So
Iraq.
Tom Friedman has decided, and I think for good reason, that right now is a giant crisis for Israel, the future of Israel, and he is going to make this more of a crisis by telling American Jews, especially, to split over Israel. He finally is joining my column of Israel critics somewhat. We can get into the differences, but he's saying, American Jews, you have been supporting Israel for the last 40 years. Great. Those were your marching orders. Now we're changing them. We want you to start criticizing Israel because it's about to go down the tubes with this new Netanyahu government, and they are going to alienate the Western world, alienate the United States, unless we get them to stop some of these radical changes they're making.
And yeah, thus the headline Netanyahu is shattering Israeli society, he says. And there's been some astounding headlines about former Mossad chiefs denouncing Netanyahu, special operations officers, I think, saying that
Yeah.
they won't serve, they'll go AWOL and they
Yeah.
won't serve a government in its new form. What is happening over there?
Well, I think the military elites, which have always are very worried by what Netanyahu is doing. Netanyahu is leading the most far-right government ever, and because of his own fears of he's been indicted, his fears of going to jail, he is trying to kneecap the independence of the Israeli judiciary, and he's got his fascistic right-wing coalition, a strong majority of 64 votes, who are going to help him do that. And the sort of people who care about Israeli quote unquote democracy and how it looks to the world say, if you do this, this is going to destroy our standing in the United States, destroy our standing among American Jews, and endanger the future of the Jewish state as a democracy and a outpost of the West in this undemocratic Arab world.
Well, it sounds like part of
So
that
that's
has
where
nothing to do.
Friedman is. And that's where Friedman is. He's saying, don't do this. You're going to undermine the unshakable bond. And this is the goose that laid the golden eggs, is American support, American Jewish support.
How intertwined are the issues of the occupation of the Palestinians and the sort of, well, I don't know how to characterize it, but the violence going on, the Israeli raids going on and everything in the West Bank right now, bombing Gaza from time to time as well. And
the demonstrations?
Yeah, and the demonstrations and Netanyahu's power grab and this. And by the way, when you use the F word on the show, you have to explain what you mean because as you know, as everybody knows, in American society, everyone to the right of Bernie Sanders is a fascist, supposedly. But in the real world, that word has meaning. And I know that you wouldn't use it so unadvisedly, but that's how it sounds to people. So I'd like for you to give you an opportunity to explain what you mean about just how right-wing is this coalition behind Netanyahu now, Phil.
Yeah, well, Netanyahu is dependent on a very far right-wing party that has called for deporting Palestinians and Arabs from the West Bank, that has called for erasing Palestinian villages. So even people well to the right of me have said this party has fascistic political culture about it. It's fascistic. And so anyway, Netanyahu depends on this party, and the demonstrations are about the huge demonstrations that are stopping traffic in Tel Aviv and that are often run by these military guys in a very organized fashion are not about Palestinians. They're about changes to the Israeli kind of constitutional setup that would sort of destroy the independence of the judiciary and undermine international investment, cause high-tech businesses to leave. They don't care about Palestinian human rights. But inevitably, when you have this type of crisis, Palestine is always involved because this government came in, the fascistic party that I'm talking about, they only became the third largest party out of nowhere because Israelis are terrified of Palestinians, and they realize that the occupation is unsustainable, but they want to sustain it. They're subjugating another people, giving them no rights, and the Palestinians don't accept that, and they resist it, and so the Israelis support harsher and harsher measures against them. So the Palestinian issue is inextricably bound up with this, but the demonstrations in Israel are not about that. Tom Friedman will talk about Palestinians somewhat.
But, you know, his article begins with lethal attacks by Palestinian youths against Israelis are coinciding with the expansion of settlers and the torching of Palestinian villages by settlers. And later in the thing, he says, Israel has never experienced a Palestinian intifada, a Jewish settler intifada, and an Israeli citizen judicial intifada all at once. But that's begun to unfold since Netanyahu's far. So back to his panic, right? Like, what does he care?
Yeah.
His job is spinning for Israel and telling American Jews and everybody else that this is fine. So, but for some reason now he's worried. What is going on that makes a difference to him, really? He thinks that 6 months from now, American Jews will look at Israel so much differently. In what way, really?
I think that there are profound changes happening in Israel. So you're looking at Tom Friedman. We've talked about Tom Friedman. We can also look at the J Street letter signed by 92 Democrats saying, Biden, stop Israel from doing this. Okay. So 92 Democrats, mostly liberals, not the squad, but also not right-wing Democrats, are saying, hey, Israel, you are going off the rails. So there is a broad concern among this sort of liberal Zionist component of American establishment.
And regarding the settlements specifically?
No, it's about quote unquote democracy, but it's also about the settlements. So that these people, this fascistic right-wing party, is destroying Palestinian rights even more, causing violence to happen in the West Bank, causing resistance to happen. You guys got to stop this so that this gets on the back burner again. We want it back on the back burner, and so we can continue to talk about two states. So there is a genuine radical movement inside Israel that has of Jewish supremacy that has taken over the government. It's always been a Jewish supremacist government, but this removes the fig leaf, and suddenly you have these people who are openly fascist and openly saying that we need to deport Palestinians in ministerial positions, and it's embarrassing to American Zionists, and it really can hurt the cause. And that's why they're going ape blank.
So, yeah, it ultimately comes down to the public relations of if they can keep the occupation and the subjugation of essentially half the population that's under Israeli rule out of the news, then they can keep up the pretension that there's this Jewish democracy there. But if they have to talk about the Palestinians all the time, then they have to admit that it's not really a democracy when half the people have no civil rights whatsoever, no civil liberty protections whatsoever, no representation whatsoever.
Right. But that's what I am thankful for, the disruption here, Scott, because you and me, I mean, I hate to use this word with you, but you and me got woke on this issue some time ago. We understood that that it's no democracy if Jews have rights and no one else has rights. Okay, we're not like Einstein. This is sort of obvious. So, okay, we were ahead of the curve. We're very independent thinkers. But I think that the danger of this disruption that's happening right now is they're not going to be able to put the fig leaf back on. Now, I'm optimistic. I am convinced that anyone looking at this situation who has a reasonable and fair sense of how human society should be ordered would be appalled by this quote unquote democracy. But I think that more and more people are going to come to our side because of this.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's really a question of whether Israel is a Western society at all. I mean, they try to continue with this pretension. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu speaks really good English, and a lot of the ruling caste are European Jews and that kind of thing. And yet, you know, they're really from Eastern Europe mostly, and don't really have a democratic legacy unless you just ignore all the stuff you have to ignore to say that, yeah, this is really kind of a Western liberal democratic society. Sort of never really
Yeah,
has been. We're just talking
it's
about
always
whether
been
the
a
veneer
farce.
is on or off at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a farce on that score, and you're going a few hundred miles east of Istanbul anyway. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're not in the West, and much of Israeli society, including the political structure and the settlements too, are from Middle Eastern Jews who came to Israel, and Russians who came to Israel. Some Jews, some not Jews. So, um, and those Middle Eastern Jews are Arab Jews, who are many of them in the government and the settlements. So to talk about it as a Western country, it's not really a Western country. And Palestine is definitely not a Western country, and Palestine is much of what Israel is now. And so I think that those labels are helpful to Americans who are proclaiming this is the most important relationship we have, but they're BS.
Yeah. Sorry, hang on just one second. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for Tennessee Hot Sauce Company. Man, this stuff is so good. They get all different flavors. Garlic habanero, honey habanero, pineapple habanero, poblano jalapeno, and the blood orange ghost. They're all so good, I swear. And for a limited time, Tennessee Hot Sauce Company is featuring official Scott Horton Hotter Than the Sun thermonuclear hot sauce. It's full of Carolina Reapers, scorpion peppers, Dr. Pepper, hydrogen isotopes, and all kinds of things that'll burn your tongue clean off. Seriously, it's really good. Get yourself a hot sauce subscription. Spend $40 or more and use promo code SCOTT to get a free bottle of Hotter Than the Sun hot sauce. That's tnhotsauceco.com. Hey, y'all got to check out these awesome busts of our hero, the great Ron Paul. They're made by the renowned sculptor Rick Casali. They're 13 inches tall, hand-painted bronze resin based on Casali's brilliant original. Y'all may have seen mine in the background on my bookshelf in some recent interviews. The thing is unbelievable. Check out this incredible piece of art at rickcasali.com/Ron Paul, and you'll see what I mean. Use promo code Horton and you'll save $25, and this show will get a little kickback too. That's rickcasali.com/Ron Paul. Casali is Casali. rickcasali.com/Ron Paul. And there's free shipping too. Now, so I don't know, man. I like to do the analogies because I know they work, and I know that, as we've talked about for more than a decade now since I've known you, that I used to be of the understanding that I don't really understand what's going on over there, and I don't really want to know because I know everybody's wrong. Because I don't believe God is anybody's real estate agent, and I figure just it's a bunch of cynical, whatever, this and that.
Yeah.
I put off wanting to try to learn about it. I knew that I couldn't understand it without really looking into it, and I didn't want to. And so I also presume that
they wanted you to stay away.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And frankly, I think it's fair for me to presume that that's how most people are about it. And so instead, what they get, especially on the right, all they're going to hear is Ben Shapiro say, it would be like if Mexico was attacking America. What would we do? Not defend ourselves? And my thing is that that's a lie. It's more like if the Apache were, or the Comanche or whoever, or I don't know if there are any Comanche left, the Cherokee were, firing rockets over the walls of their reservation, where they've already been conquered eons ago, and are surrounded by gigantic concrete walls, and are, essentially it's like the Attica prison uprising in New York is a closer analogy.
I agree with you.
To a foreign invasion or anything like that. And I also like the one about Mississippi, where first of all, for analogy's sake, think of it like the blacks were there first and all along before the whites came. Not that the whites had, brought the blacks as slaves, which is, even worse, but same difference anyway, for the sake of argument here. Then you have a society where the whites rule the South and the blacks are mostly in the North, the Mississippi or whatever. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure I've seen maps like that. And then, but the whites have all the power and the blacks have none of the power, circa 1940 something, right? So, then the thing is, if the whites had said during the civil rights era of the 50s and 60s, when the court decisions are coming down and the activists are demanding an end to segregation, if they had said, listen, we are not going to desegregate and we're not going to give blacks equal rights. We're just not going to. But we are going to one day let them have northern Mississippi as a separate independent black state, and then they'll have full rights then. But then
Right.
someday never comes, and it's 30 years
Yeah.
since Madrid and Oslo,
Exactly.
and they were lying.
Yeah. All
That's
true.
what's going on here. Now
That's
you
true.
understand.
That's true. That's true.
And it's
what I
so
would-
unfair to the Palestinians. It just sucks
Absolutely.
for them. It's absolutely
but-
ridiculous what, and horrifying what happens,
Okay, but Scott, here's what I would challenge you about this. And that is that I know you're a genius politically, okay? But the things you just laid out, they are not rocket science. They are obvious to anybody who looks into this a little bit. And I think that more and more Americans are having that awareness. And crucially, going back to Tom Friedman has a very Jewish audience. And Jews, I think, are the most important American constituency on this. They are the ones who, as the Americans for Peace Now says in the Tom Friedman column, and other Jewish leaders say in that column, American Jews are the ones who said, our job is to provide Israel with diplomatic support in the United States. And that the Israel lobby was composed chiefly of American Jews who cared about Israel. And so you have these people, my community, which has taken on this job for the last 50 years willingly and has spent a lot in political donations on this. Well, guess what? Right now, they are re-examining their role. That is good news. Yeah. So people who were always sort of somewhat taking this seriously, but then the neocon said, we got this. Okay, yeah, everything's cool. Tom Friedman says everything's cool. It's a democracy. They are getting to hear what you just said about, hey, guess what? This is like Mississippi, but even, a dystopian, they are seeing this. And so I feel like there is going to be more and more awakening, more and more Jews understanding this is apartheid. And guess what? I'm not going to support it. I'm hopeful that way.
Yeah. Well, look, and that's been pretty much your beat this whole time, is the crack up on the liberal Zionist left in America, especially the Jewish liberal Zionist left.
And throw in the squad. The squad is not on board on this. And the squad represents the left in America, the progressive left in America. So you have the, identity politics left, which is saying, hey, we don't like this thing. We are anti-Zionist.
It's the one thing they're good on.
I'm sorry?
It's the one thing they're good on, the identity politics left.
But they're anti-Zionist
I'll
left.
take it.
And now they have an address in the House. We have an address in the House of Representatives for anti-Zionism. I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. And look, this subject came up with your colleague, Jonathan Ophir, who I interviewed on the show a couple of weeks ago. And he was talking about the, insane, vision, I guess, the policies, the planned policies of Netanyahu's new cabinet and how bad they are.
But people are going to focus on this now. That's Tom Friedman is saying, look at this. There's this guy Smotrich, who's their finance minister, who's called for erasing a Palestinian village, who's coming to Washington. The State Department allowed him to have a visa to come here, even though he's called for ethnic cleansing. And there's going to be demonstrations against him. Maybe they're going to be small. Maybe the squad is going to be out there. Great. Maybe the liberal Zionists will be there. But at least there'll be people saying, guess what? We don't want ethnic cleansing in our name. We don't want to support it with American dollars. And so that's going to happen on Sunday, Israel Bonds conference in Washington. And so that's another moment of awakening. I guess I believe there's an awakening happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a difference is really being made there. People are, and, this is why there's such panic over the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, which I'm never for sanctions. Boycott and divestment, that's all purely voluntary behavior. But the point of it is no one believes that the nation state of Israel is about to be deprived of capital from, international finance if they have a project that's not on the table, right? The question is, why would anybody boycott Israel? It's just a public relations thing. I thought Israel are our friends. Important. Aren't they just like us? And they're our buddies over there and whatever. Right. What's the controversy about anyway that somebody would boycott them? And that's what the panic is that it raises the question of what the problem even is. When most Americans, and I guess, probably most people in the world who know anything about what's going on in the world know, but Americans are just so propagandized about this, they might be surprised to find out. I remember Noam Chomsky saying that when the first Intifada broke out in 87, how the American people were like, what the hell is going on here? It was like, again, Israel was being attacked by a foreign invader, because as far as the press had ever told the American people, there are no Palestinians with any reason to be upset that they're being occupied and essentially enslaved and deprived of all their rights in the West Bank and then the Gaza Strip there. That's not a subject of discussion. So it was more like Mars attacks. Like, oh no, our poor Israeli friends are being killed.
But Scott, aren't you encouraged by how there's greater awareness now than there is in 1987 of the reality?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is it definitely is growing. And, again, that's why the panic over the BDS movement, and that's why to support it, at least the B and the D.
Absolutely.
And look, this is why, as we talked about, a couple years ago, is why Bet Salem and Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International all came out and said, all right, that's it. This is apartheid. I really urge people to read that. I posted those things on Twitter, and I've had people go, oh, that's crazy. How dare you say that? And it's like, hey, man, you should read this thing.
Yeah.
It's completely indisputable.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. It is one state between the river and the sea. That's a fact.
Yeah. And Chomsky says, I don't use the word apartheid. The reason I haven't is it's worse than a South African apartheid. Anyone who goes there says this is worse, who has some knowledge of what South African apartheid. I mean, it's obviously South African apartheid was no picnic, but
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, this is the gold standard of oppression right there, man. Right. That's the benchmark for, having a racist caste society like this. It's completely crazy.
That's right. That's right. And so I should just say, you have liberal Zionists now saying, I thought it was anti-Semitic to talk about Jewish supremacists. Guess what? Jewish supremacy has taken over Israeli government and is affecting the American Jewish community too. Liberal Zionist rabbi saying that. God bless her.
Yeah. It's just amazing. And you know what it is? Thomas Friedman's probably making it easier for them, and vice versa too.
Yes.
There's a new consensus. This crack up is coming. It's been a long time coming, but it's pretty hard to reconcile. If you have anything like, I don't know about communist ones and really real leftist ones, but if you have any liberal values, then it's pretty inconsistent that you would support this society. And frankly, the leftists have been better than the liberals this whole time, based on whatever principles, I guess really just equal rights for minorities and that kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's really look, even if you're a rabbi, as you're just saying, like, you could be a rabbi who's been a Zionist your whole life and still look at this and be like, hey, this isn't right, because it's not right.
It's not right. It's not right. And they've gotten away with this progressive accept Palestine forever, supporting minority rights in the United States, supporting civil freedoms, and, and over there, pure apartheid. So that contradiction is coming to an end. I hope.
Hey, look, this is an important symbol or signal, or at least it should, as I was just babbling and I'm now repeating, it should make it easier for people who before wouldn't say this. Like, this is a little bit of a pressure valve that, like, hey, look, Thomas Friedman is saying that this is a real problem. Maybe people who were, I don't know if we're going to go that far. Maybe it's okay for you to talk about this now.
That's great.
It's all social psychology anyway, man. I know, because I studied it for a couple of months in junior college.
It's good.
So it's my speciality.
It helps.
I don't know how to use it to manipulate anyone to believe what I want, but I do see the way it works on people,
I think you're doing a pretty good job.
We'll see. Listen, thank you, man. You do a great job, and your website is fantastic, and thank you for it.
Cool. Okay, have a great weekend, man.
You too. You guys, that's the great Phil Weiss. He's at mondoweiss.net, and so are a lot of other great writers too. Go check it out.
The Scott Horton Show, Anti-War Radio, can be heard on KPFK 90.7 FM in LA, APSradio.com, antiwar.com, scotthorton.org, and libertarianinstitute.org.